Welcome to the classical period. You've now accomplished 2 time periods so far. As you know, we're going backwards in time on purpose. I want to start with a quote and use it in a completely different context than it was given. Maybe you've watched Bradley Cooper's movie Maestro about Leonard Bernstein. Bernstein once gave a lecture on modern music and said a quote that I appreciate, and I'm going to use it in the context of classical music. Why does so many of you hate what it is that makes it classical? Maybe after you know what it is that you hate, you may hate it less, or at least hate it more intelligently. Or conceivably, you may grow to like it. Or you can go on hating it as before, which is your democratic right. That's my goal with this course. I don't expect you or need you to love everything presented here. I do need you to dislike things more intelligently than you could have before. So, we're in a new time period and we have new struggles. Remember that we just came from the Romantic period, which is essentially breaking all of the rules that we are about to establish in this time period. Number 1, demand and versatility of output. Number 2, restraint to fulfill expectations. And number 3, technological limitations. Let's look at those individually. Number 1, working for patrons usually meant a constant stream of compositions. These compositions were used for a variety of events and often required a massive quantity as well as speed. Composers might conduct their own works and also teach lessons to the patron's family members. Number 2, restraint to fulfill expectations. These expectations could be from the patrons, adhering to trends or patron preference, or could be general expectations for music of the time. Music had to fit within acceptable forms and conventions. Unlike the Romantic period, we cannot have extremes in dynamics or tempo. We avoid excessive ornamentation, which is a rejection of the Baroque style, which we'll get to. Finally, the audience wants their expectations to be realized, meaning where they think the music is going to go actually goes there. Predictability is therefore beautiful. Technological limitations shaped the compositions of the day. In general, the dynamic and tonal range of most instruments were not as advanced as they were in the Romantic period. Think about the way keys moved. Some instruments, including the forte piano, had keys that were less responsive when touched, which resulted in slower repetition of notes. Bows, used on string instruments in the classical period, were less effective at producing different articulations or how a note is sounded. Intonation, or the pitch accuracy of an instrument, or how sharp or flat a note is, made it extremely difficult for multiple instruments to play together and sound in tune. As a society, we find Greek and Roman cultures to be beautiful. We even idolize them, and we model our architecture, music, math, and other areas after them. You'll watch a video that talks more about the Greeks and Romans this week. Many advancements are happening that impact our daily life, such as electricity. How would we live without that now? Enlightenment. Think of its impact in 3 ways: reason, education and engagement, and philosophical ideas. Reason. Enlightenment loved the idea of reason, logic, and clarity of expression. Instead of dramatic being beautiful, think Romantic period, beauty is in using your mind, structure, and balance. Education and engagement. Public access to education. How crucial is that? Because of this, we get public concerts. Music is not only for the elite. What type of music might an audience of peers actually enjoy? And philosophical ideas, humanism, and universal brotherhood. So So remember that we want our architecture to look like the past. This will also tie in with the music, and we'll get there in a few. Architecture. There are all these columns. They are very symmetrical. They all look the same. They are also even in number, which is beautiful and predictable. They also have little bits of filigree or fanciness, but not a whole lot. When these values are applied to music, we come up with symmetry in music. This is an example of a scale, +1, showing that we could evenly divide down the middle and it would fit together perfectly. This is also true with our number of measures. Sequence, having an idea and repeating it. In this case, we're just moving by step each time. Major and minor scales and stepwise melodies. So instead of pulling on our heartstrings in the Romantic period, we find beauty in structure, thoughtfulness, and reason. This is probably why you could more easily listen to classical period music when you're studying versus Romantic period music. Culture in the classical period is kind of summed up in this painting. The idea that we're spending all of our time reading, studying, talking about philosophy. Probably not your typical day, but this is seen as ideal. How are musicians and composers making money during the classical period? The Patronage System. Music was a way to showcase how much money you had, or for parties. If you lived at a court, you wanted to have an elaborate lifestyle that featured music for parties or when people came over. You would hire a musician to live at your court. You would pay them to make and perform music. So the good news is that musicians had a steady salary. They knew where their next meal was coming from. They weren't out on the street selling music. You also had a built-in audience. Downside though, if you were paid by one person and living at their house, you kind of have to make them happy. If they really like the harmonica, then you have to write a lot of harmonica music. So not a lot of freedom to be creative. Where are we performing in the classical period? Mostly the court. Think of it this way. We just came from the Romantic, which has performance in the concert hall, especially because of the massiveness of everything. In the classical period, we are mostly performing at the palace, with a move to the concert hall towards the end of this period. Before classical, Baroque, we're performing mostly at the church. Okay, 2 more topics left for this video. First is Concerto versus Sonata, and I have broken it down into hopefully manageable bites. The Concerto is a specific type of music that is structured with 3 movements and is typically performed in a larger space like a theater or a concert hall. The Concerto features a soloist against the rest of the group. You can think of it sort of like a political rally. The soloist is the inspiring leader that wants to convince the rest of the group to go along with what he's preaching. It features a cadenza, which is the time for the soloist to really shine. It's virtuosic, meaning it is displaying exceptional skill, and is located towards the end of the movement. It increases the drama. Our example of the concerto is C.P.E. Bach's Concerto for Cello, Strings, and Continuo in A minor. Go check it out. The sonata is also structured with 3 movements, but it is suited for smaller, more intimate spaces. It's perfect for the court, usually for piano alone or an instrument with keyboard accompaniment. You can think of this like a deep, emotional conversation between 2 people, or sharing intimate details with a friend. Our example of a sonata is Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. It might sound familiar to you. Go check it out. So, what's the deal with movements anyway? Movements are self-contained thoughts that are part of a whole. Each movement is separate but relates to the entire work. They have their own tempos, character, and structure. A theme or motive from one movement could return in a later movement. They also are usually meant to be listened to together rather than individually, because it provides context for where you've been and where you're going. I think modern day examples of this would be movie franchises or long-running TV shows. Take Star Wars. Now, please forgive me, I don't know much about Star Wars. Admittedly, I slept through the few I tried to watch. However, I understand the concept. Each installment is separate from each other, but relates back to the entire work. Each installment has its own characters and storylines, and depending on which episode, could be offspring of other characters. Characters have their own themes, and those tend to resurface in various episodes. When talking about Star Wars, you kind of need to know which trilogy you're talking about to orient yourself and be more specific. Similarly, take Friends. Friends has 10 seasons with around 24 episodes in each season. Each episode of a season feature the same characters, but different things are happening. Each episode relates to the larger whole of the season, just as each season relates to the larger whole of the series. Characters have themes that develop, and storylines might return. When you talk about Smelly Cat, for example, are you talking about Phoebe performing it? Or are you talking about how her dad actually used that melody and sang to her when she was a child? So, you might be talking about season 1, which is very different from season 8. Specificity matters. So, when you look at the listenings this week, you will see movements specifically called out, and sometimes time markings to go straight to that movement. The guide will let you know whether the particular movement is fair game for any quizzes or not. Please listen to them regardless, but I'm not a monster. You will know what is possible for quizzes or not. Quizzes will ask you to identify which movement. Be prepared for that. Finally, sometimes we listen to songs that are part of a larger work, kind of like Defying Gravity is from Wicked. The entire work will be in italics with the title of the song in quotations. Happy listening.